Yes, welcome to the No State Project for November 3rd, 2018, live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. Yeah, I gotta do what I can for headphones. My daughter lost my headphones, so this is gonna be it. But, hey, only those on the YouTube stream will know that, but we are live, of course, from LRN.FM from Keene, New Hampshire. Well, I'm actually in Mesa, Arizona, but we're also streaming on my YouTube channel, No State Project. So, yeah, a lot of stuff to get to. I want to thank everyone for the continued support of the show. I do appreciate that. If you want to be able to help support the show, you can do it at markstevens.net. And remember, we've got not only Government Indicted available to set at markstevens.net, but also the script and the motion to dismiss. And what we did on the role-playing on Thursday, found out that Mike had a dismissal of his the charges against him in Ohio, or Ohio, depending on where you're from. So big congratulations. I'm going to put that together into a video with Shane in New York, who had it thrown out for a denial of speedy trial rights. And I also got another call of shame. Aye. They just keep getting better and better. Another tax agent in Oregon. Not quite as bad as Colorado, but wow. Bad. So I will have that call of shame. I don't know if I can do that today, but it's only a few minutes long. But let me tell you, it's, good. It's good. It's good. Little disappointed that the last call of shame, almost nobody saw that. If you're not aware of that, then go to markstevens.net. And you're right, if you're watching the stream after the big broadcast today, check it out with another tax agent. A little bit longer than the one before that, but it was good. It's always good when you get these people in just a few minutes to start backing away and reversing themselves and contradicting. Because a solid position like those held by tax agents, they fall apart in just a few minutes, because nothing says a solid position nearly as much as contradictions. If you want to join me on the big show today, it's 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 and the pound sign. If you're watching the stream live on YouTube, the number is always in the description box, so just check that out. You can also get me on Skype at FrankRizzo3. Don't call, but if you insta-message me first, I will then bring you up on a break to the big broadcast there. And we do have breaks here on the big show because this is a live radio broadcast. The Liberty Radio Network, so keep that in mind if you're watching the stream. I will be pulling the live stream down and posting the commercial-free version after the show, so don't get too married to the comments there. The call of shame. Oh, again, I'm going to post it, even though the numbers are horrifically bad on the last one. The one before that, bad, but not as bad as this. If you want to learn how to effectively defend yourself and use the Socratic Method and how easy it is to destroy somebody's claim from the so-called government, this is another really good call to demonstrate that. It also goes and is very instructive as to why it's effective to make sure that you first get the person's claim first, especially here. This is the thing with tax agents. When you're dealing with somebody whose claims are not based on evidence and they're not based on logic, they're based on a prison system, because we tax you, we take your money or get you to give it to us because we can, because we're willing to shoot you to get it and then take all your stuff. Because your neighbors will turn around and say, you should have just complied. You should have paid your taxes. You should have just paid. You brought it on yourself. Yeah. So what they tend to do to try, my gosh, they do this, I think, in an effort to deflect attention away from them. Look, I don't want to be questioned. I want to just make these assertions, and I don't want to have to prove them. I want just give us the friggin' money, shut up, and then leave us alone for the rest of the year. Just give us the money. So I think what they do is they just, well, I'm not a lawyer. You start to ask the questions. Yeah. So the first agent we spoke to, because we want to find somebody who's not only responsible to abate, but we want to talk to someone who knows, who's actually qualified to determine that the laws apply and that taxes are due. So the first agent backed off real fast, saying I'm not a lawyer. You're going to have to talk to somebody else. It was an A3, RA3 lead worker. It was, and so we get the woman on the phone. She actually calls back within the same day, which is extremely rare. And one of the first things I ask, I say, well, look, so-and-so sent us to you saying that you're the one who's qualified to make these determinations, that to determine that the laws apply and that a tax is due. The laws apply and create these tax liabilities. Yep, she's the one that's qualifying to do it. Oh, great. Oh, we're talking to someone who's qualified. Nice. All right. Now, I know regular listeners to the show know things are going to go, they're going to turn sour real fast. That's the beauty of just asking questions, leading questions. You also lean on your who, what, where, when, why, and how. But you better be pretty confident in the answer that you're going to get. That's why they're only good when you really got them backed up against the wall. So here, like you always know, I always get the basic, how they're operating. And I said, you operate under the presumption that if Mr. X is physically in Oregon, then your laws apply and create, give you jurisdiction to tax them. She says, absolutely, yes. So she confirms that's the way they operate. Now, whether that's the way they operate or not, what's important is that's what the agent is saying. We know that that's true, though. It's called territorial jurisdiction for a reason. So then I just have to go back, okay, and ask for the facts that she relies on to prove that. And immediately she's in trouble. So what do? They accuse me of arguing. So I have to say, what the hell do you mean by arguing? What are you trying? What do you mean by that word that you're pulling it out so quickly in a conversation? Didn't I just ask you a question? That's not arguing, is it? Then she reverses herself. I said, I'm not arguing with you. I asked you a question based on how you're operating. You confirm that. That's your assertion that the laws apply. I just want to know if you have any facts. It's not an argument. Just want to know if you have any facts. My argument is you have no facts based on the premises, which is I'm asking you questions and you can't answer. So now it's clear to her. She realizes I'm not some jackass. I'm not just some schmuck from Long Island. She can't get away from answering the question just by accusing me of arguing. Then the big reversal comes, and she says she's not qualified. But you can't leave it there, because she was just insisting that the laws applied. She was just insisting that there was a tax liability. Now it comes out she's not qualified by her own admission to make that determination. So is it good faith and due process to proceed against my client when you know you're not qualified to have made these claims against him? They don't want to answer that. No. I'll continue with this and more in your calls on the other side of the break. Remember, we are doing a radio broadcast, so please don't troll me on the YouTube channel there. We'll be back in just a few moments, so don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM, and streaming live on my YouTube channel, live for November 3rd, 2018, right there. And so just to for those tuning in, another call of shame coming. I gave you a bit of a preview there. It's always good when those making the accusation admit they're not qualified to do so. And then you definitely get what is, I believe, direct, solid evidence of bad faith, that even though they're not qualified to say the laws apply and you owe taxes, or the laws apply and you need a driver's license, they still proceed anyway. What kind of a person does that? What kind of a person will accuse you of XYZ and say, well, I'm not qualified to say XYZ, but I'm going to proceed against you anyway as if I really was? They admit they're not qualified, and they're not even digging deep. It's not like they're saying, well, I'm not qualified, but someone on YouTube is, and they think you're wrong. And so we're going to proceed because people on YouTube and Facebook, they disagree with you, Mark. And we're going to go based on their expertise. At least that's something. But here, admitted, not qualified, doesn't stop them for a second. That's not every single instance. No, of course not. That would be terrible. But it does happen, and it's happening here in Oregon. So hopefully we're able to get a stay of proceedings on there. Now, she didn't want to give us a stay of proceedings, and I tried. I did. So we're gonna continue to try for that stay of proceedings based on that lack of evidence. So a common thing that I hear is what good comes of this? What good is it? So what? All right, the agent admitted that they're not qualified to have made those determinations. Well, those determinations form the very foundation of the assessment. Nothing else in the assessment is right or relevant unless that foundation is established first. And we're establishing some serious bad faith. So imagine we're at a hearing later and the agent is asked, you admitted you weren't qualified to make these determinations, right? Yes. And you were asked directly. I asked you directly, is proceeding against somebody when you're not, admittedly not qualified to do so, consistent with due process and fair? And they don't want to answer the question. Of course they don't want to answer the question. But they would have to if it was allowed on a cross-examination, if it had to escalate and had to get to court. Where, if you file an insurance claim against them for the damage that they're causing, you certainly would be able to get a tax agent. You should be able, well, I hope so, be able to get a tax agent into discovery and either do a deposition or question them in open court. If you knew and you admitted moments before that you weren't qualified to make those determinations, why did you continue to proceed anyway? Oh, because I thought I was right. But you just admitted you weren't qualified. How could you believe that you were right when you're not qualified to make that determination? It's like these anti-vaxxers, that they know better than, thousands of doctors who have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clinical studies. No, I read it on the internet. I know better. They're not qualified, admittedly not qualified. So, yeah, I would say if it doesn't get resolved, we should file an insurance claim and get it into court where you could ask them those questions. She's not going to answer the question. I didn't expect an answer. What I expected was that she would at least give us an inch and she would not allow it to escalate. And say, well, whoa, all right. The crazy anarchist from Long Island, yeah, my good faith tells me I got to at least put the brakes on. you know, so that's a very important thing we want to get out. It's okay. Not only show that they don't have the evidence, but if they're going to proceed anyway and get the admission they're not even qualified. Yeah. I'm not saying that a judge or some or administrative hearing officer is going to look at it and say, well, the agent did say they were unqualified. So if anyone's having a problem making a connection here, if you look in if you look at a traffic ticket, if the police officer was making determinations, and imagine him being on the stand, admitting he wasn't qualified to determine probable cause. Admitting he wasn't qualified to determine that there was a violation. You're not there in court to prove that the prosecutor's allegations, at least in traffic, they're not there to prove that the prosecutor's allegations are true beyond a reasonable doubt. They're there to prove that the police officer's allegations are true beyond a reasonable doubt. They're not there it doesn't matter what the judge thinks. The judge is supposed to be a fair, impartial, independent decision maker. He's just there to see if the prosecution is presenting sufficient evidence to prove the police officer's allegations beyond a reasonable doubt. And if the police officer is saying, I'm not qualified, there's your reasonable doubt right there. How could he possibly have had a case? You're talking about a complete crapshoot that the police officer, not being qualified by his own admission, actually had a case anyway. I'm not qualified to do this when I think I got a case. That's why it's important. And I would imagine it might be easier to prevail in a non-traffic or non-criminal proceeding where you're seeking damages against the city for what the cop, the judge, and the prosecutor did to you and did to us. I think that we probably fare better there. At least I would hope that. I like to think so. But we got to get some test cases out there. And this is the thing with YouTube. I don't know why people are actually saying that I'm approving a forced vaccination. Boy, the lack of critical thought is why I get, it's YouTube. We're just not going to reach everybody. My name is Mark Stevens. You want to join me here on the big show? It's 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020. I'll address that when I get back. That is just ridiculous. I never said anything about supporting forced vaccinations. I was just making an analogy between people who think they know better than professionals. But so that's all. But I'll address that when I get back. What a stupid comment. Oy vey. Yes, welcome back to the No Stay Project. Live for November 3rd, 2018. You want to join me on the big show? It's 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020. And even if someone is for vaccinations, the idea that they're for forced vaccinations is kind of a big assumption. It's kind of silly. I'm not for governments. I'm not for a group of. It's anarchy. We're talking about anarchy here. Decidedly, I've been pretty against, and I've been pretty straightforward explaining myself that anarchy, and I'm an anarchist because I don't believe in a ruling class. I don't believe it's right for a group of men and women to get away with lying, stealing, killing, and cheating people just because they call themselves a government, as if the basic principles of right and wrong don't apply to them, and they have a moral right to be immoral. So the idea that I would agree to government forcing vaccinations, no, kind of a kind of a silly argument there. You know, I'm for libraries too. Does that mean I want people to be taxed to pay for them? No. That's one of those Republican Democrat statist kind of things, where if you talk about government not regulating, let's say marijuana and whatnot, people say, you just want kids to get stoned, or it's kind of ridiculous. That come up with a better argument than that, because that is really, really bad. Speaking of really bad, wow. You know what? Before I get into that, some really good news. A number of people have sent this to me. I'm happy to hear this. You can't find any. There's only 2 mentions of this online so far, so I guess we're going to have to wait for excerpts or listen to the podcast. But apparently it was, I think it was yesterday, Tom Woods had somebody on, Phil Magnus. Apparently he's been able to track down more of Lysander Spooner's writings. And so you can, it's actually called 2 treatises on competitive currency and banking. About 230 pages of Lysander Spooner's writing on currency and banking. Boy, this is, I discovered Spooner. My gosh, it must have been someone had someone had photocopied Spooner's No Treason, and I couldn't put it down. I whoever it was, I was was at his house reading it. I think it was 1996. I was just floored, and I said, I gotta give this back. I gotta take this with me. I have got to finish this. And now, after all these years, I mean, we thought we had all his writing, and apparently no, there's 230 some odd pages that we've got. So definitely check that out. I'll have to listen to that podcast when I get a chance. This Phil Magnus. Wow. Yeah, I guess it's available only at American Institute for Economic Research. So, yeah, I'm going to have to do what I can to get a copy of that, because more Spooner, yeah, that's really propelled me down this road that led me, to where I am today. And all this, so much of the success is based on on seeing things as an anarchist and seeing that they're just a group of men and women forcing us to give the money. I mean, wow. It was remarkable, and to this day, by looking at the facts like he did, and not accepting any of the political mythology, and using that with the Socratic Method, is shown itself to be so effective. Mike in Ohio again got a dismissal, and Shane in New York fought for 2 years before the judge threw in the towel and threw it out for denial of a speedy trial. When you start with a foundation of facts that you can be almost certain about, that there's no reasonable dispute to those facts, and you start there, as long as you stick to that, and your object is to just show that the facts do not support the person's claim. That's why it's effective, highly effective. It's why in these call to shames, why it's so easy to destroy their argument. I tell you, the importance of Spooner's writing cannot be understated. I know that a couple of people like to use that as a pejorative, but it's YouTube that you got to expect stupid things like that. The man's clarity in his writing is phenomenal. The Constitution has no inherent authority at all. If it has any authority at all, it's only as a contract between man and man. It doesn't even purport to be that. To open it up with that, oh, Oh, did that hit? And then at the end, look, again, I'm paraphrasing. I think it's pretty close. The writer has wrote much and no doubt could write much more. But suffice to say, the Constitution has either given us the government we have now, or it has been powerless to stop it. In either case, it is unfit to exist. Oh my gosh, that's brutal. Brutal logic. Absolutely brutal. And I can't... oh, yeah, this is great. This is some really cool news, so that we've got a couple hundred pages more of Spooner's work. Definitely looking forward to checking that out. So we've got a caller who's been on the show before. Hopefully he's already Red Spooner. We got Home Bumming It in California. Welcome back.
Hey.
You got good news?
I got, you know what? It's kind of amazing. I don't see how they could possibly want to take this to trial. I got video footage from the DA of me getting hit in the head by a security guard over at the grocery store for no reason.
For no reason?
Other than he wanted to block the doorway and ask me, you know, what was in my pocket. And I'm all like, well, none of your business, you know. I mean, it's like they're hitting me with a false reporting charge. And they have no evidence of a false report or something they said that wasn't true or anything like that. And I'm going, where's it going with this? It's shocking. I don't know how I would actually use the guilty plea to get them to stop. I mean, I don't know what to do, really. I'm kind of like dumbfounded at this point.
All right, well, I'm glad
Is this unusual?
No, well, some people... The main thing I get is people don't watch the video and read the article, and they say, I can't understand why you would want me to plead guilty. Like, that's not what I'm saying. It's a tactic. So, let me put you on hold. We're up against a break. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. We're going to be discussing the plea of guilty and the logic behind why I use that as a tactic. It's not to necessarily plead guilty. It's to keep the burden of proof, the focus of the burden of proof, on the prosecution's burden. So we'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM, and streaming live from my YouTube channel, No State Project. If you want to join me on the big show, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. Bring Home Bumming It back. We're talking about the guilty plea, the unsigned plea of guilty, and it being used as a tactic. Not that you should sign it. I mean, somebody could sign it. I mean, if they're going to throw you a smoking deal, hell yeah, you can go ahead and sign it. But that's not the initial, that's not what the main reason why we're using it. But I have to address this garbage, and I'm so sick and tired of seeing this. If you are saying that you intend on pleading guilty, has the prosecution, submitted sufficient facts to prove that the court has jurisdiction in the first place, that is not a conditional plea. A conditional plea, and I'll read directly from Wiki, and it is cited, is one where the defendant pleads guilty to the offense, but specifically reserves the right to appeal certain aspects of the charges. For example, that the evidence was illegally obtained. That is not what we're doing. We're not saying I want to, I'll plead guilty, but I'm going to appeal this. Let's say I'm going to appeal the finding of jurisdiction. Then it would be a conditional plea. It is not a conditional plea to merely ask if the prosecution has set forth sufficient facts to support a finding of jurisdiction. That is not a conditional plea. The prosecution has that burden already. You just want to know if it's been met. Is the judge laboring under the opinion that the prosecution has made sufficient facts set forth. They submitted sufficient facts to prove jurisdiction. So home bumming it. If anyone turns around and says, well, that's a conditional plea, tell them I have no intention of appealing any part of this decision. So take this conditional plea stuff and shove it right up. Or what you can do is you could say, why don't you tell me what you mean by a conditional plea? And if they tell you, well, if you're gonna plea, they probably can't even give you a straight answer on that. Things mean different things in law instead of this whole tomato crap that people use just to keep a consistent narrative. In an effort just to say, well, you're wrong. And so no matter how well you bring out and argue your position, no matter how much evidence, no matter what logic you have on your side, I'm going to redefine the damn word. And I'm going to define it to mean whatever the hell I need in order to show that your argument is wrong. So once again, a conditional plea is one where the defendant pleads guilty to the offense, but specifically reserves the right to appeal. We never mention anything about appealing when we're doing the unsigned plea of guilty. In fact, the unsigned plea of guilty specifically states that I'm waiving my right to appeal. I already addressed that, and I wrote that thing like 15 years ago because I know what a conditional plea is. A conditional plea is not, I will plead guilty if the prosecution has jurisdiction. That is not a conditional plea. A conditional plea is, I will plead guilty, but I'm specifically reserving my right to appeal the finding of jurisdiction. So if you're going to criticize, get it right. Jeez. So anyway, you still with us, home bumming it? Ah, damn it. What the hell happened? Did we lose him? All right, we'll see what we can do to get him back. But, it's important to not try to... On some things, when in Rome, so to speak, there's things mean different things in a lay sense as opposed to a legal sense. I didn't know. Home bumming it, you're not muted right now. Just shout it out. All right, let me see what we can do here. Okay, I don't know why the software was doing
There we go.
But now you're back. Okay, so you understand now the difference. So if the judge says it's a conditional plea, you know how to respond, right?
Yeah, he never said that. I haven't brought up a plea yet, and the last time I was there, it was just allegations. There was no evidence. Every time I mentioned evidence for proof or something like that, it just got knocked down. There's nothing but allegations so far. So I went ahead and they're setting it for pretrial. So evidence hearing. I got the evidence. It exonerates me, and I'm like going, what do I do now? How do I get them to go ahead and not take this to trial? I mean, if they want to, I guess I don't really have a choice, but I'm shocked that they would even want to do that. It's completely in my favor.
Well, from your standpoint, it's completely in your favor, sure. But let me address the issue with why we use the unsigned plea of guilty, which is not a conditional plea, regardless of what anyone on YouTube says. We use it so that we can keep the focus on the prosecution's burden. We don't want it going anywhere else. We know in advance, we already know that the prosecution cannot meet their burden. The best that they can do is actually admit, and sometimes they admit that. Well, we don't have to prove that. Okay? And that's why we respond with, oh, so I get to make legal arguments without any proof also, right? I can make legal allegations with no proof. And they'll tell you, no, that you and I can't do that. But, man, they're going to let the prosecution get away with that. Well, that's just... Well, I was thinking that. That's our favorite legal conclusion. It's the foundation of everything we do. We have to accept that. So that's why we use that. Okay, if they are willing to throw you a deal, great. So here, You can say at the pretrial, and you should have your discovery paper with you, and you should be asking them questions where your goal is to get them to either dismiss or throw you a deal that you can live with. So let's just say probation. So it's like a token victory for them. The two things I would focus on is the evidence they have to prove the foundation of their case, that the laws apply because you're physically in California, and the witness with personal firsthand knowledge of that. So their witness under Rule 702 in California has to have personal knowledge of the matters they're testifying to. Now, a police officer is going to testify that the laws apply to you and you violated them, right? Isn't that what they're going to be testifying to?
That would be my guess. I mean, but they don't have any evidence that they apply or that I violated them. I mean, where do you go from here?
Well, the thing is, if you can knock out, all right, you have two parts to this to their claim. One is the laws apply because you're physically in California. Two is you violated them. Now, number two is not relevant unless you have number one proven. Okay, that's the foundation. Number two, right. The alleged violation is completely irrelevant if they can't prove the rule applies in the first place. It's just like trying to get me for a violation of the Olympic Committee rules or the NFL rules. You have to prove that the laws apply. And you can't, that's the way logic works. You can't just assume the most important part. So if you can, and that's something you'd have to be able to, you want to be able to articulate. Look, you cannot, not only can you not, do you have admittedly not a single shred of proof for the first part of your claim, you have no proof for the second part of your claim. Even if you could convince a judge that it was relevant without the foundation being properly set. You also.
So, but he went ahead and he said that they were going to admit the evidence according to penal code something or whatever.
Whatever.
And yeah, and so, I mean, I guess the rebuttal to that would be, is that based on factual evidence that the prosecution has provided, or based on facts that they're alleging?
Well, is this really just really just going to be? You said that there was video. Are they using the video against you?
I don't see how. I mean, I dare them to. It's so retarded. It's amazing. Okay, so I have an hour of body cam footage from the cop talking to me, telling him, look, I want to make a report. This guy hit me in the head for no reason. The video of the security guard actually blocking the only exit.
Well, hold on. Hold on. I got to mute you out. We're up against the break. We're not going to hear you anyway. My name is Mark Stevens. Up at the top of the hour break, so there's going to be 4 or 5 minutes of no audio. So just keep that in mind. I will still text on the YouTube channel because we are doing a live broadcast, but we'll get to the second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio here on the No State Project in just a few moments, so don't go away. Welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. Live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona for November 3rd, 2018. And that reminds me, it's like every time someone new met me in the Army, and the leaders, or a teacher, almost without fail, they would see I was from New York and Long Island, and they'd say, oh, do you live on Toity and Toyd Street? I'm like, Long Island is not the Bowery. So if you can insult me, get it right. But welcome back to the big show. Second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network, of course. You want to join me? It's 218-632-9399, 632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the #. And you can Skype me at FrankRizzo3. Gosh, they want me to do an update. I do not want to do an update on Skype, especially on the Mac. So, yeah, it's FrankRizzo3, but instant message me first before you call, and I will bring you up. So if you want to do a Skype call, that's great. I will call you and join you to the broadcast on a break, which we have, the top of the hour, every quarter of the hour. So, but I'm glad to be with you here. We're talking with Home Bumming It, and Home Bumming It is got a code violation there in California, and you don't believe the video supports them, and you can't believe that they're still trying to prosecute. They must think that there's some money to get out of you, whether it's cash or it's going to be that they have an extra, they have one less bunk empty in their prison system. Yeah. It's a blunt way to put it, but I think that's the truth. You have to convince them it's not worth prosecuting you, and that's why the pretrial is your opportunity to do it. So just like I do with these call of shames, well, you have to put the prosecutor on the spot, and I believe we get leverage by asking them the questions. And just like with the last few call of shames and the one I'm going to post here in a day or so, when they just don't have the evidence. I mean, what do you say to the prosecutor when you go in there and do this? And he says, and you're asking him, what evidence do you have to support your claim that your laws apply just because I'm physically in California? What do you say when he turns around and says, I don't have to prove that. The judge isn't going to make me prove that.
Well, he never said that. I mean, I usually talk to him outside of court. They don't usually say much inside of court. It's usually me and the judge. And the judge told me that jurisdiction was an element of the allegation and needed to be proved. So at that point, maybe if I pulled out a guilty plea that was unsigned, I could have got him to, go back to the facts the prosecution's provided or alleging that prove that the code applies to me in the first place. But
you don't have to necessarily pull it and use the unsigned plea of guilty. The plea of guilty is if they're giving you a ration of crap and they are going to deny the demur without explanation, and they just want to rush you through the process. And so in an effort to keep them from doing that and just speeding you towards trial is to put the brakes on and say, whoa, I intend on pleading guilty. Does the prosecution have evidence to prove that there's jurisdiction to set the matter for trial? And that should put the brakes on. And like I go through in the video, it also, gives you grounds to, and you'll have evidence to use against them if they ignore that, fight you on it in some way, and enter a plea over your objection. So you can show that the judge is lying in an effort to cover up the prosecution's lack of evidence.
Yeah, well, that's what they were doing to me for like the first 15 minutes I was there last time. The judge was trying to talk so fast that I was shocked he was able to. I mean, he was talking really fast and he denied the demur based on penal code section whatever that they sufficiently brought the accusations in front of the judge and that the judge had a right to hear them, but there wasn't any evidence yet. And he told me that it was something to be proven later on. And so it isn't the part of the tactic of holding the unsigned plea of guilty is just to get him to call it out right there and then. I'm ready to plead guilty if he could prove it.
If he has the facts. Well, when they see, this is something that happened in Ohio a while back, where the judge, at the day of trial, right before the trial, he's saying, is there any evidence of this? And the judge said, that's what we're here to decide. I haven't seen anything yet. We're here. This is the trial to determine if there is such evidence. And that's not how this is supposed to work. It's called pretrial for a reason. The pretrial is for the prosecution to lay the evidence on the table. And like I've said so many times before, you do not force something to trial when jurisdiction has been raised and say that jurisdiction is settled at trial. Because there's no way in the world, and I think we're all in agreement on this, you are never going to be able to sue a judge or a prosecutor, and that the trial judge is going to say to the defendant judge, dude, I'm sorry, you're raising all these jurisdictional challenges, but that's a trial issue only. Now, I'd love to see where someone like Burke, who was a judge in New Hampshire, where he said this on video, and I'd love to someone sue him and use that against him and say, you're right, and say to the judge, Judge, before you make a decision on the motion to dismiss, you have to look at what the man's actually said. He said jurisdiction was a trial issue only. Is that correct? Because judges are not given a presumption. It's presumed that they know the law. So for someone like Ed Burke to say jurisdiction's a trial issue and it not be true, that could be seen as a crime. That's obstruction of justice. The judge actually committed a crime by doing that. So how is the judge? So the judge is like in a position. Was Judge Burke right, or are you right by throwing it out for lack of evidence proving jurisdiction? In some way, Judge Burke is being proven wrong. Which way are they going to do it? So that's something that we have to object to, and we cannot let go. And if anything, we can get into the higher court and get it reviewed if we have the money to spend on a filing fee, or maybe we can get that waived. But judges turning around and saying that jurisdiction does not have to be proven to trial are lying through their teeth. That is absolutely false. And anyone who says that's not false, that jurisdiction is a trial issue only, they are lying. They are dead friggin' wrong. There's not too many things that I'm as certain as, but here jurisdiction is not a trial issue only. That's bull. So to get back to your pretrial,
I'm just wondering.
I'm sorry.
I said I'm just wondering if they're going to try to keep this going for a couple of years, like your other caller.
Well, as long as you haven't waived speedy trial rights, they may try to run the clock on you. How many days has it been?
They have till the 26th to give me a trial, and there's 3 other allegations that are kind of on the back burner, waiting to see what happens to this one.
When did they file the complaint, though?
Sorry, what?
When did they file the complaint against you?
April, I guess, was when it started.
April. I would April, May,
April
June,
16th.
July,
August. They got till November 26th.
They have till the 26th to set for trial. Oh, yeah, that might be true. All right. Well, let's address that and get back to what we need to do to get you prepped for the pre-trial, so that you may be able to get this thing tossed out. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM. A Liberty Radio Network. Yes, the Liberty Radio Network. And streaming live on my YouTube channel. You can join me at 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. The passcode 2020 and the pound sign. We'll be back in just a moment. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM. Are all statists communist? Well, let's explore that in another segment. If we get a chance to. We got quite a few callers here. So we're back with home bumming it. What do we need to do? I have my idea of what you need to work on, because we did some role playing a couple of weeks back. What do you think what do you feel is you're not knowledgeable enough on to be able to go in and take this prosecutor on and basically and at least get close to admitting he doesn't have the evidence to support his claim?
Right. No, I mean, I was not on my best last time I went. When they had when they decided they were going to railroad me through, and I mean, I did get him to slow down and reset it for 1:45 that afternoon, but I don't know, get him to admit that there's nothing in the evidence to show that the code of law applies to him. Of course, I've been trying to do that this whole time.
Oh, it's not that difficult to do. I mean, you got to know what his position. You first have him admit and confirm what his position actually is. They believe that just because you're physically in California, that the laws apply to you. They're not going to argue with you on, or I shouldn't say argue with you. They're not going to contradict that. They're not going to disagree with you. I mean, they're scumbags, most of them, but that they readily admit that, and then it's just a matter of, all right, well, I don't, as I set forth in my demur, I'm not seeing the facts to actually prove that. What facts are in the record that you rely on to actually prove that that's true? And that's what gets it started. And you also have, look, you are, what witnesses do you rely on to prove, that the laws apply to me and I violated them? Who you plan on calling this cop, right? Yeah. Does he have personal knowledge that the laws apply to me? What if he says no and he doesn't need such personal knowledge? I mean, how would you address that?
Well, motion to dismiss.
Well, you're going to be talking directly with the prosecutor at this point. So your objective is to be able to not only bring out that he doesn't have a leg to stand on, but that that due process requires that he throw this out. You want him to be leaning on, gosh, I want to get this off the docket. How do I get rid of this? So he says to you, he doesn't need any personal knowledge of that.
Well, I thought that's what testimony is all about.
Yeah, you could
first-hand knowledge.
You could say, and it's good that you want to use a leading question. Well, doesn't Rule 702 require that you have proof that he has personal knowledge of the matters he's testifying to?
Go back to their code.
Well, you're trying to bring out a contradiction. He's saying that the cop does not need personal knowledge of that, even though he's testifying to that. So that you bring out the obvious contradiction. Doesn't Rule 702 require proof that he has personal knowledge before he can testify?
Yeah.
So, now you have to deal with his, the only thing he can say is, well, he doesn't need to have, personal knowledge. He may say to you, well, he's not testifying that the laws apply to you. He's only testifying that you violated the laws.
Well, then what evidence is there that the laws apply to me just because, the officer says I violated them?
Well, you want to bring out better, I think, would be, well, if how can he testify? How can he have personal knowledge that I violated the laws if you admit he doesn't have personal knowledge they apply in the first place? How is he supposed to determine that I violated them if he doesn't have knowledge that they apply in the first place? That's a better leading question. And so what you're doing is you're keeping the focus, right on him where it belongs, because the pretrial is, what does the prosecution have that they're using to present at trial to prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, if he only has the police officer's testimony that the laws apply and you violated them, well, he's got a personal knowledge of that. And that's the thing. I understand. We're not okay. We know that the personal knowledge can come out in testimony. But the purpose of the pretrial is so that you know what he's testifying to. What will he testify to? What proof will he be providing testimony of, of personal knowledge? So you ask him, sir, what are you planning on having him testify to as far as proof of personal knowledge? Because they're not supposed to surprise you. So he has to be able to show that he has a legal right not to disclose proof that he plans to present a trial to use against you. And that's not somehow discoverable. Right? I mean, that's what it comes down to when he says that. Well, I don't have to disclose that before trial. Yes, you do. That's what discovery is.
Right.
He has to give you all the information and evidence and what kind of testimony the cop is. It's just like if he was going to have an expert witness testify against you, and you were turning around and saying, what is he testifying as an expert to? I don't have to tell you that before trial. No, yes, you do. You have to have an idea of what they're testifying to so that you have an opportunity to frame a defense and put together an effective cross-examination. They're not supposed to, due process and fairness, if you're going to have a fair trial, so that you're not surprised at trial. So the evidence and the proof that they're using against you has to be disclosed so that you can effectively defend yourself. Now, some things are going to come out at trial that they couldn't foresee. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a basic and fundamental part of every single code violation that they file against us. And that even though the police officer isn't being called to testify to that in all these other cases, it's still necessary, it's still relevant and essential, and we have a right to have that disclosed prior to trial. So don't let him get away with that. If you keep hitting him like that, I think he's going to be pretty inclined to at least throw you a deal that you can live with.
Well, last time, so the very last time that I went was for pre-trial conference and evidence and things like that. They didn't bring anything the first time. I actually had to call them on it and be all like, "Why? Where's my evidence?" And the judge asked me if 3 days was long enough for trial. I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen anything. They say that I have a false allegation. I don't even know or false report, and I don't even know what the report is or what's false about it. And all they had was the police report, my arrest, some sort of arrest.
Home Bumming, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to finish off air, and maybe we can get you in on the Wednesday broadcast or the Thursday, but we are out of time for the segment. I got a long list of calls I have to get to, so I appreciate everyone's patience. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. We'll be back with your calls in just a few moments. Do not go anywhere. Yes, welcome back to the big show live from the fortified compound here in Mesa, Arizona. LRN.FM is the network, the Liberty Radio Network, and also streaming live on my YouTube channel. I will be pulling down the live video feed and putting up the good audio. Actually, the audio on the live feed is pretty good, but it is still, I can clean up some of the things there, and so we'll get the good audio. Probably the first segment of the show will have video, but good video, not what we get on the live stream. Although, somebody tell me, is it really coming out in 5 frames per second, the feed? Someone tell me, just post over there. Let me know how the live video feed looks. If it's 5 frames per second, wow, that would suck. But as long as the audio is good, and that's the most important part here, then that's fine. And we'll get everything posted, the podcast, up at markstevens.net today. So, yeah. Let's get to the phones. We got a new caller. I don't even recognize the area code. This is a new one for me, but we've got area code. We have area code 317. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello, my name is Arlandis Coleman, and I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Welcome to the big show. What can I do for you today?
Well, I did have a few questions. I was looking at some of your paperwork on your website, and I was wondering, a lot of the stuff that you talk about is with pre-trial, and here in Indiana, they don't really have a lot of hearings before pre-trial, or I take it that they need motions to request it. I was wondering, did you have any paperwork for that?
If you feel the need to request a motion hearing, you can just usually call the clerk and get that scheduled. But a motion like that is pretty easy. You could just say, one or two sentences that a motion to dismiss was filed and you'd like to have a hearing set, and that's usually enough. If anything, depending on where you are, you can contact the clerk and ask them to schedule a hearing for motion day, and the clerk will send out a notice to everybody, in the prosecution, so that they know that a hearing on the motion is being held. That's usually a pretty easy thing to do.
Oh, I see. Also, I actually have a few traffic tickets myself, and I had already pleaded not guilty to some of them. And I was wondering, will the paperwork still be effective against a ticket that's already received a plea?
Right. Yeah. Well, nothing is done that's free and voluntary. All of your participation in the process is mandatory. You either do it or you go to jail. The other thing, too, is personam jurisdiction, while they may consider that to be waived, which I don't. I think the facts are against that, like I just mentioned. Regardless of that, subject matter jurisdiction cannot be waived. So whether you entered a plea or not is irrelevant to the issue of subject matter jurisdiction. And they don't have any evidence to prove subject matter jurisdiction either. Yes, they have jurisdiction over traffic cases. We'll give them that. But the operative word there is cases. They don't have subject matter jurisdiction over all traffic complaints. Any half-idiot, no, you'd have to be a half-idiot to argue with that. And so whether there's a case or not depends on whether there is the violation of a legal right and damage and redressability. And here, the important part of that is that the legal injury is the allegation that you violated the law, where my position is from, and it's been confirmed thousands of times, they don't have any actual evidence to support that allegation. So because of that, they don't have sufficient facts to show that they have subject matter jurisdiction because they don't have a traffic case. They just have a traffic complaint.
I see.
It's a common thing. They always act under the presumption that they have jurisdiction over literally every traffic complaint, and that is just not true. They have jurisdiction over traffic cases, but you have to present an actual case. And a case is not just an accusation that someone disagrees with. That's insane.
How do they how is a traffic case made?
Well, a case is made the same way. You have to have facts to support an allegation of a legal injury. Here, the legal injury is the violation of the code that then results in damage, which is why you have what's called the corpus delicti, which is the act and the result. The act is the violation of the code. The result is the damage that act caused. So in most traffic situations, they're only trying to punish the act. They're not addressing the result because most of the time there isn't a result to address. So that's how you set forth a case. You have to have the injury and the damage. And the reason why I even have on my website to show, according to their own laws, one, it's an adversary system. To be adversarial, there has to be an antagonistic assertion of rights. They're saying they have that you violated your obligation and their right to obey the law, comply with the law. I think I lost my. Okay, so I hope I made sense there. Something I may listen to this later and realize I forgot something. But yeah, to have.
Well, you're making sense to me. It's just a lot to take in right now. I'm planning on listening to it later as well. It's more of just the fact that I'm in a place where, I'm receiving the information, but I don't really know how to implement it. And that's really what my call has been about. I want to know how to implement the information I've received.
All right. Well, yeah. If you actually get into a hearing, your focus should always be whether it's the hearing, a motion hearing, a pretrial conference, or you're at trial. Your focus should be on the prosecution's lack of evidence, lack of information or facts that prove the claims that they're making. Because like I mentioned before, to home bumming it, their accusation is a two-parter. The laws apply to you because you're physically in Indiana, and two, you violated those laws. And what I say every week is that when you're in court, relevance is extremely important. Even though it's a very low threshold, it's extremely important. The truth of something is not relevant if it's not meaningfully connected to the proposition that they're trying to prove. And so whether someone has a driver's license or not is not relevant if they can't first show that the laws apply and you're required to have one. So you can argue all day, hey, the guy doesn't have a driver's license. Okay, is that relevant to proving that he violated the statute? There's not enough there. And you haven't established a foundation to show it's relevant. And so that's something very important. Now, what they want to do is they want to skip number one, the laws applying. They want to get right to number two, that you violated the code. So that's why I use the analogy of the NFL rules or the Olympic rules. They want to skip proving that the rules apply and just try to show that I violated them, which is ridiculous. Just hold on a second. We're up against another break. We'll finish in the next segment. I'm Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, streaming live on my YouTube channel, No State Project. Get subbed today. I appreciate all the few hundred people that subbed in the last few weeks. But we'll be back with your calls in just a moment, so don't go away. The number is 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. Yes, welcome back. Talking with... I'm going to mess this up. Oh. That's too bad. He dropped off. Orlandis in Indiana. He unfortunately dropped off, so maybe he can give us a call back here on the big show and we can finish. So hopefully we can get him squared away for whatever hearing he may have coming up or trial. The big thing here is, like I say every week, we got to keep the focus on them. You notice in the call of shame, which I got another one, the problems for these people were usually because I didn't let them derail the conversation. As much as they want the focus off of them, and that's why they turn around and they say, are you saying the laws don't apply? Please just answer the question. What facts do you have to support your claim that they do? Because my position when I'm dealing with the courts or I'm dealing with a bureaucrat is not to come out and say and make an assertion the laws don't apply. That's certainly not going to help me. My argument, our position is going to be your claim that you're making has no factual support. And I know this because I asked you. I asked you straight out, and you said you were not qualified to do that. Those are my facts. So just like I had to tell that lawyer here in Arizona, that state attorney, if you disagree with my position and you want to counter argue, cool, bring it on. But you have to actually have a counter argument to my argument. And to do that, you have to show that my facts aren't correct. So that when I asked the agent what facts she relied on and she said she was not qualified, you have to dispute those facts. No other counter argument is going to be valid. Address the actual facts and that support my argument. You have to do that if you're going to have a valid counter argument. And that's why they just retreat to, well, we're going to stand by our position. But your own witness is not qualified. Oh my gosh. Oh, Odin, please imbue these people with some good faith for a change. Zeus, whatever you got to do, give them some good faith. Someone who knows good faith. Is Shane. We have to get his call. We got to get his paperwork. I have that video I need to do. But Shane from New York, welcome back.
Good afternoon, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing well. You got a terrible connection there.
I'm in my car and I've been on the drive for 2 hours coming back from Syracuse to Buffalo. And what I'll do is it's a $250 fine if I go from phone to ear. And Bluetooth is fine.
All right, I'm
really sorry.
It's okay. I've had, there's been worse. So what's going on?
I'll do the Trial Act, that wasn't, I didn't even read the transcripts, and you brought it up to me, so I looked it up, and I said, oh my God, you're right. He dismissed it on speedy trial, and he granted my first motion, but I looked at my first motion, it doesn't even talk about speedy trial.
No, before I mentioned it on the show again, I had, email contact with you. I said, and I asked you did you file a motion to dismiss for denial of speedy trial? And you said no. I mean, I'm sure you would have mentioned that to me, but I had to confirm. No. Yeah. So,
no, and Mark, I'm so sorry. I skipped right over it.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. I actually, it wasn't until I was photoshopping the names out of that I read it that close. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, and damn good that I caught it, because had I not caught that, I would have been ripped to shreds, and it would have reflected, it would have looked, people wouldn't have, critics wouldn't have said that it was, I just did it sloppily. I would have just that I deliberately am trying to I'm deliberately trying to mislead people. I still think, though, that it had something to do with you fighting them tooth and nail for that time, because, I mean, the judge could have just, if the judge was really concerned about doing the right thing, right, he would have granted your motion to dismiss. But even if we can't give him that, if he wanted to, see if you agree with me, since you were in the situation, I look at it this way. If he really was interested in doing the right thing, he would have granted the 30-30 a year and a half ago. Right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, at that time it was at the appellate court.
So this one on appeal?
I appealed one that got reversed.
This one on appeal?
It's been going on since 2006. Yeah, I won on appeal. What happened was those three charges, obstruction to administrative investigation. I think some new crap they got in New York now. They can just charge you for it if you interfere. But there was nothing to interfere with because there was no probable cause to even be arrested. And it's a long story, but the appellate court remanded it back down to the lower court, and we proceeded. And they already dismissed all the criminal charges, and I paid a seatbelt, and I won on the seatbelt charge.
Okay, so this is a very,
and he reversed it.
This is a very important
bizarre
nugget. Well, okay, so I don't want to see it get reversed, and I don't think that's something that's going to happen. So you did prevail on the other charges on different, and it wasn't speedy trial. The thing is, if this went up on appeal, then speedy trial rights doesn't even apply. That's completely off the table if it was appealed. Look, as much as I dislike these people, there's no way you can't honestly say that the trial court, the prosecution, should be held to the speedy trial rule if the matter is appealed. That just is, that's, right? I mean, any honest person would agree with that. So the fact is, 30-30 didn't even apply, and the judge had to know it didn't apply because you appealed it.
Right.
So it's not legitimate to say, there's no merit to say that the judge saw that it was a violation of the speedy trial rights and and dismissed it on 30-30 when speedy trial rights wasn't an issue at the time because of the appeal. So,
correct.
So you deserve full props on this one.
So what I want to ask you is, I got my notice of claim to file. You got to do it within 90 days. And I did it initially back in 2016. You got to give a notice to file a claim against the city or whatever, or the town. So I already did that, but I'm doing it a second time because this time it was finally dismissed back in September.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I do want to thank you for that. But he tricked me, and he said, I'm going to grant your first motion. Well, my first motion was the one you always talk about on your radio show. And, where's the evidence? And he just jumped over that and said, well, we're going to grant your first motion under 30.30. And I didn't even pay attention until you brought it up. So I want to thank you for that. But they do not want to touch those motions.
Yeah, this is definitely not as cut and dry as a couple of critics would have anyone believe. The fact that this was appealed throws that right out the window. And that's what got, and I'll post, because thank you, I do have the transcript, which I already noticed. But you can see in the transcript, he does say he's granting the defendant's motion. He doesn't say I'm granting your first motion. He said he said it was I'm granting the defendant's motion, and then he immediately follows that with granting under 3030.
Okay.
So this lends a lot more credibility. This just lends a lot more credibility to the argument that it was to avoid the prosecutor's lack of evidence because the judge had no grounds to do it under 3030. Unless I'm completely wrong that you can hold the prosecution to the speedy trial rule if the matter is appealed. That's crazy because an appeal is not going to take less than 6. The appeal itself is going to take longer than the whole speedy trial rule is going to allow. So that doesn't make any sense. So, hey, I appreciate the call over at the top of the hour break. I got to let you go.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome. Shane in New York, glad he called with that clarification because that is some very important context when we're talking about, a plausible argument as to why the judge threw out all the charges against him. But we got a lot more to still get to, so don't go away. We're going into the third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on LRN.FM and the Liberty Radio Network and streaming live on my YouTube channel. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Oh, and the number is 218-632-9399. Passcode is 2020 and the pound sign. Listening to the No State Project live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona for November 3rd, 2018. And streaming live, of course, on my YouTube channel, No State Project. You want to join me on the big show at 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. We can also bring you up on a break from Skype, and that is Frank Rizzo 3. So, a lot of stuff. I wanted to, I haven't done this in a while, and I got part of it today, so you can kind of compare, see how well I did with this first part. But Lysander Spooner, big influence on me. If somebody wants to use it as a pejorative, whatever, that's social media. Tends to bring the worst out in people. I don't get insulted in real life nearly to the extent that I get insulted on social media. I don't even get insulted as much by bureaucrats. So, and the most common insult is to label me a sovereign citizen. I get much worse on social media from so-called anarchists. So, but someone who was not a so-called anarchist, Lysander Spooner. And I'm so glad to hear that we've got new material from him that apparently hasn't been available in 140 years. 2 treatises on competitive currency and banking. I'm sure that's really good. But let's go back to basics, to his classic, No Treason, the Constitution of No Authority. I actually have, gosh, it's pretty old now, but I do have on my website, and it's on YouTube, the entire audio version of this. So, the Constitution has no inherent authority or obligation, has no authority or obligation at all unless it's a contract between man and man, and it does not so much as even purport to be a contract between persons now existing. It purports at most to only be a contract between persons living 80 years ago, and he wrote this in 1870 or so. And it can be supposed to have been a contract then only between persons who had already come to years of discretion so as to be competent to make reasonable and obligatory contracts. Furthermore, we know historically that only a small portion, even of the people then existing, were consulted on the subject or asked or permitted to express either their consent or dissent in any formal manner. Those persons, if any, who did give their consent formally are all dead now. That's true. More so now. Most of them have been dead 40, 50, 60, or 70 years, and the Constitution, so far it was their contract, died with them. They had no natural power or right to make it obligatory upon their children. It is not only plainly impossible in the nature of things that they could bind their posterity, but they did not even attempt to bind them. That is to say, the instrument does not purport to be an agreement between anybody but, quote, the people, end quote, then existing. Nor does it either expressly or impliedly assert any right, power, or disposition on their part to bind anybody but themselves. Let us see the language. Well, let us see. Its language is, we the people of the United States, that is, the people then existing in the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, provide the general promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. It is plain in the first place that this language as an agreement purports to only be what it at most really was, that is to say, a contract between the people then existing and of necessity binding as a contract only upon those then existing. In the second place, the language neither expresses nor implies that they had any right or power to bind their posterity, to live under it. It does not say that their posterity will, shall, or must live under it. It only says, in effect, that their hopes and their motives in adopting it were that it might prove useful to their posterity, as well as to themselves, by promoting their union, safety, tranquility, and liberty. See? Devastating. Suppose an agreement were entered into in this form. We, the people of Boston, agree to maintain a fort on Governor's Island to protect ourselves and our posterity against invasion. This agreement, as an agreement, would clearly bind nobody but the people then existing. Secondly, it would assert no right, power, or disposition on their part to compel their posterity to maintain such a fort. I love when he says, so when a man says he is planting a tree for himself and his posterity, he does not mean to be understood as saying that he has any thought of compelling them. Nor is it to be inferred that he is of such a simpleton as to imagine that he has any right or power to compel them to eat the fruit. Yeah. So if you're not familiar with this, Lysander Spooner's No Treason, the Constitution of No Authority, then I highly recommend taking a few hours, if necessary, to read, or you can actually listen if you can tolerate it. Hey, he was from the Northeast, so yeah, I am. You can tolerate me reading it. It's definitely worth it. If this is the first you're being, this is gonna seriously. If you've not heard this before, it's gonna seriously challenge your worldview. You would think that the Trump people would love this because it would just trigger the libtards, and you think the Democrats would love it because it would trigger the snowflake Republicans, but not so much, not too much there. But that is if you go to this is some devastating logic, and he talks about here that the if then those who established the Constitution had no power to bind and did not attempt to bind their posterity, the question arises whether their posterity have bound themselves. If they have done so, they can have done so only one of two ways. That is to say, by voting and paying taxes. But like he says, taxes is always paying at the point of a bayonet. That the only government by consent is one that you either comply or you get shot. So, and we know that's the way it is. We know it's not, like they go out of their way to say that any arguments that taxation is voluntary is frivolous. Well, if it's not voluntary, it's compulsory. So there's no logical, reasonable dispute. Those people who call themselves government are a ruling class, and they are kept in place by force. There's a prison system. You either pay or they hurt you. They could take you to jail. They could take all your stuff. Criminals. But you need to, I think it's very effective, and it's proven very effective. If you doubt this, go to markstevens.net. Look at all the success stories we have. When you go in as a skeptic, seeing them as they are and not buying into the political crap, you could be highly effective. Now, I'm not talking about going in and arguing the interpretation of their code. If you go in and argue the definition of resident, you're going to lose, because the definition of resident is not relevant if there's no evidence proving that the Constitution applies in the first place. Who cares what it says that you have to be physically, let's say, physically in New Hampshire for 6 months of the year? What is it? That's not relevant if the Constitution, a mere written instrument, is not applicable in the first place. Relevance. Like I said last time, what does this have to do with the price of tea in China? Nothing. That's not relevant. It's not relevant. You gotta show the relevance. The relevance of the phone number is so you can get on to the show. We're at another break here. The number is 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the #, and Skype is Frank Rizzo 3. It's the number 3. Frank Rizzo 3. We can get you up on a break. Instant message me first. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome to the No State Project. Hey, if you're in the Mountain Time Zone, 420. But we're here for the third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the No State Project on LRN.FM. November 3rd, 2018. We'll have the podcast up at markstevens.net without the commercials. So check that out. The video will be pulled down. So you know why. It's for the good video and audio. There will be some, just the first segment will have video. The audio is all that's, you know what I look like. I want to address a couple things here before I get, since we're coming off talking about Spooner and anarchy. I'll probably call that new call of shame the anarchist versus the statist. Because somebody was saying that this is a very common thing. There is so much, so many mislabels that people talking about politics get into. And as anarchists, anarchists are certainly not immune from that. Are all statists communist? I think this gets down to a misconception, a really, deep-seated misconception. It's kind of like from that, like I mentioned before, that most Republicans think that the libtards or the Democrats are really a closet communist, and I think it's because communist is just thrown around as the catch-all phrase for he's not a Republican, he must be a Democrat, and since I am unabashedly capitalist, those libtards must be communist. I mean, come on. Communism is a very I can't believe we still get that. Yeah, I know. Libtards and whatnot, we still get this crap, even here, which is really unfortunate. But no, I know Democrats, I know Republicans. Not all Republicans support Trump. Says a surprising, just a shocking percentage of people do. And a lot of them I know do it. They like Trump just because he says the way it is. He lies through his teeth, but they don't care as long as he's angering and triggering the libtards. It's like the only reason why they voted for Trump was because he pisses off Democrats. And because people believe, because of Fox News and whatnot, that Democrat equals communist. And that's just not true. I did a whole thing about socialism and whatnot on the show, that not all socialists are communist or Marxist or Leninist. So let's maybe do this again. And so, if you're going to call someone a communist, get it right. And communism is, at its core, it is violent. Communism where through a revolution will put the working class in power to in turn establish social ownership of the means of production, which according to the analysis, is the primary element in the transformation of society towards communism. Democrats are almost certainly statists. Communist is not statism. Communism is recommending a violent revolution to get to a stateless society, which is why you hear that in China, it's not really communism because there's no actual push towards a stateless society. There is no government in communism. The government is used as a tool to get through revolution to take control of the means of production from the capitalist. And then once that is accomplished, like in Marxism, then you transition to a voluntary or, a stateless society. So to say that a Democrat who wants increased social control or government control, that means that they're a communist, no. They may be socialist, but no, there is no Republican that is not a socialist also. All statists are socialist. There's no way around that. But so for Republicans, all it is projection. It's just a way of smearing without listening to the other side's actual damn argument. If you just took the time to know what their position is and why they want it, then you'd have a better understanding of not only them, but you'd better understand how wrong you may be. Just like communism, Marxism is a violent revolution. Socialism is not necessarily a violent. Socialism is the ideal or the idea that through voluntary means that they still get social control over the means of production. But it doesn't have to. That still doesn't have to include a state. That's why you have anarchist, social, or anarcho-communist or anarcho-socialist, because the idea is to get rid of the ruling class. So the two aren't necessarily related. But I can't tell you how many times that I've seen and heard on the internet or in personal life where people continually think that Democrats are communist. No. How many Democrats are... I mean, what? It's just... Oh, man. So no, so the thing is, is every statist a communist? No, I don't think that that's true at all. I think that every statist is a socialist. In that if you support government, you are supporting to at least some degree socialism. Because even a minarchist is a socialist or has some things that they want where there's social control and ownership and payment, such as, roads or courts or the police, military. So all statists have definitely some socialist beliefs. Now, could they hold communist beliefs? Of course they can. Well, we're talking about the generalization that all statists are communist, and that's just not true. It's just absolutely not true. It's too far from it. Is Bernie Sanders a communist? No. He's not looking for violent revolution. That's already happened. So someone's asking, what is a capitalist? A capitalist, really, capitalism at its core is private ownership over the means of production. That's it. That's the defining feature of capitalism. Socialism is social control over the means of production. Now, that doesn't, what we have here, we have a mix. Pretty much every state or government, or country in the world is a mix of communism and socialism. So I did a whole thing about about this a number of weeks ago. We'll be back here on the No State Project in just a few moments. You want to join me, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 and the pound sign. Yes, welcome to the No State Project. November 3rd, 2008, live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. Podcast will be up at markstevens.net after the show. And I guess people, you want some precision in your language. A communist and a socialist are not the same things. That's just not the means of achieving. That's like saying that a socialist and an anarchist and a communist are all the same thing, because the end goal is to get rid of the ruling class and not have government. That is the end goal of at least the philosophy. Now, there are people that may use the philosophy to a certain end to get power and had no intention of ever giving that power up. That's usually what we call psychopaths and authoritarians. They're doing it under the guise. It's just like no different than it's like what you have in places like Saudi Arabia, where they're beheading people. They behead people in 2018. They stone people to death under the guise of religion. So you got people in the United States who discriminate against people under the guise of religion. It may not be the goal of the religious philosophy, but it's being used that way. Improperly. Communism, I don't think that any of these so-called revolutionaries are real communists. I think they're just authoritarians. They're doing that. They're doing what they're doing under the guise of that. So somebody wants to say that Bernie Sanders is a communist. I don't think Bernie Sanders wants a government stateless society. This is not a true Scotsman thing here. The main part of communist philosophy is a stateless society, and one without money. A classless, stateless, moneyless society. I have never heard of someone like Bernie Sanders. I'm not saying I'm a supporter, but I've never heard him say he wants to get rid of the government, and he wants the workers to violently overthrow the healthcare system so they can move towards a stateless society. There's socialism and there's communism, and they're not the same damn thing. You can get all upset, and people get you do. That's the same damn thing that critics to the show will do by saying tomato, tomato. You have to have some precision in what you're trying to convey, and just labeling everybody you don't like a communist, even if they are socialist, is wrong. Socialist doesn't mean that they want a violent revolution. Just like an anarchist doesn't necessarily mean that they want a violent destruction of the ruling class. I'm sure there's some that do. I'm not one of them. It's so let's get if we're going to criticize a philosophy, if we're going to criticize someone's beliefs, get them right. If you don't like Bernie Sanders, at least attack his actual argument. To just label him a communist falls into the same Donald Trump, Republican trap. It's not accurate, and it doesn't help your argument any, and it doesn't help anyone take you seriously when you're just painting with such a broad damn brush. Bernie Sanders is not, as far as I'm aware, has never said anything about a violent revolution of the working class to overtake and overcome the capitalist, the bourgeois, and do away with money and the government. I don't know. If you've got a clip where he's saying something like that, I'd like to hear it. He's a socialist. He's not advocating any kind of violent revolution. So he's not a communist. He's not a Marxist or a Leninist. Did I just spend another part of my show talking about that stuff? But I want some of the other things I wanted to talk about, because I guess this dovetails right into it. When you start equivocating, when you start wordsmithing, and words don't mean anything, you get someone like Donald Trump, who actually said, I don't I don't stand by anything. He actually said that to a reporter who was trying to pin him down on something he said. I don't stand by anything. So he actually says to people point blank, don't take anything I say serious. His own Kellyanne Conway has said you can't take any of his tweets seriously because it's just Twitter. That's not this one. He said, so you can't take him serious. He tells you point blank, you cannot take what I say serious. He says it on national television, and people still. He actually said, go back and you can look it up on YouTube. He actually said and he knew he was being recorded. He said, I don't stand by anything. And then he walks away from the reporter. The cameras are still on him, and he sits down and makes it look like he's working. I'm gonna, I'll do that. I'm gonna knock this out of my ear. He was pretending that he was actually doing something because he was so embarrassed or just so, I can't say that, but he didn't want to be challenged. I don't stand by anything. Oy vey, this, oh my gosh. So what he'll do, and here in different contexts, but the same form, where you just use words to mean whatever the hell you want. He said this on TV. Rock throwing by migrants, the whole invasion. Rock throwing by migrants has not been fatal to border agents, and it is against Border Patrol and military policy to shoot rock throwers in most circumstances, officials said on Friday, in response to a suggestion by President Trump to treat them as if they carried firearms. He said, if they throw rocks, they should treat rocks thrown by migrants as firearm attacks. Consider it a rifle. When they throw rocks like they did at the Mexico military police, consider it a rifle. So Bernie Sanders talks about socialism. He's a communist. No, he's not a communist. Not by anything he has said publicly. So here, and it was horrific. Oh, this was something that there's a picture of this. The Nigerian army uses Trump's words to justify fatal shooting of rock-throwing protesters. They used it as a justification. Wow. The Nigerian army, part of a military criticized for rampant human rights abuses, on Friday used the words of President Trump to justify its fatal shootings of rock-throwing protesters. Soldiers fired this Monday on a march of about 1,000 Islamic Shiite activists who had blocked traffic on the outskirts of the capital, Abuja. Videos that circulated on social media showed several protesters hurling rocks at heavily armed soldiers who then shot fleeing demonstrators in the back. The Nigerian military said 3 protesters were killed, but the toll appears to have been much higher. The Army's official Twitter account posted a video, please watch and make your deductions, showing Mr. Trump's speech on Thursday in which he said rocks would be considered firearms if thrown towards the American military at the nation's border. We're not going to put up with that, Mr. Trump said in the clip. They want to throw rocks at our military fights back. Yeah, well, Donald Trump loves Israel so much, the Israeli government. So they deleted the Twitter post later, but it has been saved. I mean, you can screen cap that stuff. So, words mean things. We're trying to convey ideas. And it really... Call Bernie a socialist. If he starts spouting communist philosophy, call him a communist, but not till then. But we'll be back with the last segment here on the No State Project in just a moment, so don't go away. We're in the last segment here at the No State Project. So whoever we may have missed today, or if you weren't able to join me on the big broadcast, I will be live on the Wednesday show. If you're interested in role-playing, that is done on Thursday from 3 to 4 Pacific time also. But you need to Skype me at Frank Rizzo 3 before, so maybe like Thursday morning. Let me know, and then we can get you into the Discord, on the Discord server where we actually do that. And so the last 2 times we've done it, I have not done the live stream. So maybe I'll do that again. I'm getting better with the Discord stuff. So we'll see. There's a thing going on here regarding immigration, and I've had someone that I've known for a long time, and he is not a Trump supporter, but tends to go as far as not wanting immigrants. And I got to tell you guys, I am not the guy. I am not a closed border nationalist. I am not one of these fearing the immigrant, guys. There's going to be issues there, and that's why I'm not taking any more calls. I already dropped off the call line. There was nobody. They all dropped off. So that's going to have to wait. If anyone wants to call into the caller line today, there's nothing I can do about that now. So again, a little background on my family. I am half Sicilian. You see. And I am also, the other half is Irish and Scottish. And so my Scottish line came in to Nova Scotia in around 1805, 1810. We don't know exactly when, because he was actually born in Ireland. And yes, a lot of the Scots came over initially from Ireland. So I don't want to discuss that. That just bet, my Irish is primarily from Kilkeedy in County Clare, Ireland. And they came over not to Nova Scotia. They came into the United States, I believe in Boston, or it was Massachusetts. And so we know that one of the Cullens, the Cullens, they did stay and settle in Springfield, which if you're doing genealogy and you have a name as common as Cullen, and they settled in Springfield, you got your work. Oh, and he married into the O'Brien family. So, yeah, an O'Brien in Springfield, Massachusetts. Yeah, and my Moriartys, I guess, were a classic example of the Irish going to the Avalon Peninsula there in Newfoundland, and that they were fishermen. I know, there's a shock. Irish fishermen in Newfoundland. I know. So, sure, there has to be some kind of vetting or something. There's diseases and whatnot, and that was always, for a long time that was there. Especially when my Sicilian family came in, and yeah. Some would say, yeah, but your family came in legally. Yeah, but the laws are so onerous now. The law, as anarchists, we know the law is an ass. So, and did they all come in? I mean, come on, my family's half Sicilian. Am I really going to sit here and try to claim that they all came in legally? Tom, I can't pick up the caller line. I have disconnected from that. I'm not going to go and do a setup during a live broadcast. It's not any, I do know, and I can say, I'll let the facts speak for themselves. If you're from Carini, Sicily, you're going to be related to the Menino family. Anybody from Carini Menino is going to be part of your family. There's going to be second or third cousins. You're going to be in there. And so what I had found researching was that there was the Menino brothers, Antonino and Giuseppe, that they owned a beer distribution company. And so when I saw the death certificate from 1940 and I saw what he did, it was the Menino brothers beer distribution in 1940. Sicilians with a bad distribution. A lot of bootleggers went legit in 1931. So, so whether they came legally or illegally, I think the issue is, did they come and do harm to people? Did they violate the non-aggression principle? That's the important thing to me. So this idea that people who are refugees because of government, I mean, look what the United States government alone, just the United States government, look what they're doing in Yemen with those monsters of the Saudi Arabian government. So you've got, and also what's happening in Syria is not happening, it's not just the Syrians. So you've got governments creating refugees. People are leaving to come to a better place. It's not that they're saying, I'm going to travel 8,000 miles so that I can get welfare. Because it doesn't work that way. They're escaping horrible situations. I wouldn't say that my ancestors wanted to escape a horrible situation, but I would put out there that there was a mass Sicilian migration from 1890 to 1920. Thank goodness, of course. But the idea that we should be afraid of foreigners, especially in the United States, which is literally built on the back of foreigners. No, not just the Chinese, but, that it is a nation of immigrants. So it was ridiculous. The reason why 11 people died in Philadelphia. Yeah, the city of brotherly love, unless you're Jewish. Who the shooter himself said, it was reported, he believed the conspiracy theory, and I've heard this privately from people, that the Jews, meaning like people like George Soros, are actually financing and behind the caravan to destroy Western civilization. Yeah, there's no actual proof of that. There's no actual proof of that. The Jews are trying to destroy Western civilization. Yeah. So Western civilization, which made so many Jews unfathomably rich, they want to destroy that. Yeah. I'm sorry, hey, guy. I'm not a Jewish conspiracy guy. I'm not a Holocaust denier. I've spoken to people that were there. No, and I'm not one of these white supremacists, these white nationalists. I'm an anarchist, and I don't buy into this scare. You can go back and see the propaganda. It's all online now, and you can see. Because at one time, and this I think was after the Chinese were the boogeymen, then the Irish had their turn. And you can still see the propaganda photos today of the posters that the Irish were vermin, and that the Irish refused to assimilate. And then he moved to another target. Then it was the Sicilians. Oh, we're being run over by Mustache Pete. How about Fungal, Mustache Pete? They won't assimilate. Every group goes through that. Pasty white Europeans afraid of brownies. Afraid of the brown people. I'm not one of these. I'm not one of these closed border anarchists. So, unapologetically, both sides of my family, immigrants. I am the son of poor Sicilian immigrants. They made something when I got here because they had more opportunities here. But immigrants nonetheless. And yes, some of those Mustache Pete's were familiar. Anyway, this has been the No State Project for November 3rd, 2018 here on the LRN.FM streaming live. We'll be back live on Wednesday. So till then,